This is a story called Legendary by Christopher Donleona, also known as Peaceful-Blu, from the subreddit Short Stories. The stories often told of war are great tales, myths created to forge feelings of courage in the hearts of those so unlucky to be thrust into its burning embrace, and this story is no different. Anyone who saw it in earnest thought the sky had forsaken the very battlefield it sheltered. The mere sight of a pillar of light erecting straight up and down, touching the ground and the heavens simultaneously, was unheard of, but there it stood. It had to be ordained magic that summoned it to the fray in front of them. The pillar was not just a beam of light that scorched all it touched, but a doorway allowing just one individual to pass through. In his hometown, the lone soldier who emerged through the gate was of ordinary standing in life, born to a farmer who fled this very battlefield when they were young. The irony of their son being branded by the gods of war and dragged into the storm was not lost. Those who saw Jack spring from the blinding light immediately conjured falsehoods of the warrior in meager gray fatigues and no weapons. Only those allied in the 10 realms would come to know the majesty of what would transpire at Blood Gorge. When Jack exited the light proper, the soft breeze carrying the scent of blood through the crevasse became gale-force winds. The orcs, elves, and beastkin stood their ground, braving it full force, only taking a step or two to brace themselves. Within seconds, the wind stops, becoming a visible whip at Jack's command. In a flash, the whip traverses the field, winding between enemies, searching for the wounded and dying. Every allied human the whip touches is whisked out of reach, even those still in full grasp of the enemy. The battlefield grows silent soon after, save for the angry groan from creatures who thirst for blood, their attention methodically redirecting to Jax and the remaining able-bodied humans. "Surrender, and I will let you live," Jack's voice booms across the area. The beastkin shiver, sensing something is coming. Their primal instinct forces them to shy away from immense danger, but they fight the urge, going against nature, thinking they have the upper hand. As it stands, their arrogance is warranted. In sheer numbers, they are a force to be reckoned. Though their accompanying smiles quickly fade, as a squall the size of a continent blocks out the starlight, and rain begins to drench the once bone-dry terrain. The elves don't sense any magic, other than the residuals from the faded pillar. They don't sense anything coming from Jax either, other than malice. The orcs usually relish in the thought of dying at the hands of a strong enemy, but this is different. Evolution has taught them to enjoy the pleasures of life, diminishing their will to die, thus forcing feelings of fear to pulse through their thick veins. The beastkin, being so attuned to the natural world, only see a horrific disaster in Jax. Jax, seeing his opponent's unyielding resolve, obliges with combat without so much as a word. His cold, calculated saunter towards the enemy catches them off guard. The first orc he reaches reacts by raising their axe in an attempt to strike him down. The orc's entire abdomen is ripped away from his body as casually as pushing open a flimsy door. Their strong legs remain standing in place, while the rest of their upper torso succumbs to gravity, falling to the ground, mixing the rain. The look on their face as the light fades from their eyes is complete befuddlement. The beastkin begin to howl, mourning the death of their comrade in arms. Soon, one by one, every beast joins in, and howl convergence begins, calling every beastkin in the area to the pack for an all-out assault. The elves, realizing the brevity at which the tide changes, use the moment of convergence to unceremoniously retreat, with their ranks intact and their tail between their legs as they run for dear life. The orcs foolishly follow the beastkin in order to salvage their personal pride, having felt fear, and as a result, shame. As a result of Jack's pressure and precision of actions, he, in 30 seconds, assured the safety of all other human combatants, drawing unequivocally all remaining attention of the enemy's allied forces. What came next, once they finally reached Jax, would become lore for the next 1,000 years. The cloud that rolled in like thunder before Jax even moved begins to coalesce into a vortex, at first sight elevated in the heavens in a swirl of ominous gray. As those on the ground watching in awe stand aghast, the vortex descends just as the pillar of light did. A collective, "ah, fuck," resounded across the gorge. In an attempt to stop what was to come, every enemy in the vicinity lunges at Jax, their claws and axes desperate to find purchase. Jax, looking to the sky, wanting to avoid the entire act altogether, sighs as the first claw invades his personal space. So it comes to pass, Jax says, closing his eyes. Before the claw can make contact, the tornado howls as it touches down, eviscerating the allied forces as if the winds themselves were made of freshly sharpened steel. The scatter of blood and entrails makes the former site of Blood Gorge's crimson hue pale in comparison. Those far enough from the carnage, the retreated elves and remaining human forces, watch as several generations of orcs and beastkin die in vain at the hand of a man who didn't want to fight. No one moves as the tornado rages for hours, from fear of the mountain of wind somehow seeing them and giving chase. The bated breaths of the collective are halted as the tornado slowly ceases. The sky clears as if no storm had ever existed. The starlight brims with hope as a rainbow appears cascading the sky, signaling the end of, in hindsight, a pointless war to those who would hear the story years later. Jax stands in the middle of a blood-soaked battleground, untouched and unfazed by his handiwork. A moment later, another column of light appears from thin air, and Jax enters, disappearing behind it with the same anonymity as when he arrived. The first to ally with humans after the events were the elves, then the beastkin, then the orcs, and then the rest of the 10 realms. Blood Gorge was renamed Jax Valley by the humans who found out it was he who arrived that day. Jax was never spotted in civilian life again, and would only appear on battlefields with overwhelming advantage for either side, allied or not. The gods of war would eventually come to name him God of War, Vortex. The humans would come to name him Jax, God of Peace. The elves would name him Equilibrium, Malevolent Wind. The Beastkin called him Howl, Calamity of the Air. And the orcs simply call him Death. That was a story called Legendary by Christopher Donleona, also known as Peaceful-Blu, from the subreddit Short Stories. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you next time.